Just send the money. You don't have the guts to divorce me, right?
I was assigned an overseas transfer at the age of 50. When I told my wife Nancy about it, she responded with such cold words. Not only that, but she even threw a divorce paper at me. Is this a divorce paper, right? So, you want to divorce me? I picked up the divorce paper and asked Nancy in return.
I'd been thinking about it for a while, but you wouldn't have the courage, right? So just send me the money, and I'll put up with it.
The divorce paper I picked up was already filled out in Nancy's section. All I needed to do was sign and submit it, and the divorce would be official. Understood. That's all I said. Then I hurriedly packed my bags, and by the next week, I had left for overseas. My name is Kevin. I turned 50 this year. I work as a salesman at a major multinational company. I've been working here since I graduated from college, so it's been over 20 years now. As a child, I had many opportunities to go abroad because my parents worked internationally, which naturally sparked my interest in foreign cultures. As a result, I can now speak French, Spanish, and Italian almost like a native. I have a loving wife, Nancy. I met Nancy during my college days. She was 2 years younger than me and from a different department, but she was quite famous in school for her beauty. She was also friendly and didn't pander to men, which made her popular among both genders. Nancy always seemed to have friends around her. I had only heard of her by rumor, but I fell for her at first sight. However, thinking I had no particular charm and was out of her league, I was satisfied just watching her from a distance. One day, while out drinking with my friends, I happened to run into Nancy. She was with a few girlfriends, one of whom was good friends with one of my friends from the same club, so we ended up drinking together.
Wow, you speak so many languages. That's cool.
Thanks to my friends, we ended up sitting next to each other and making small talk. She was studying in a science field and wasn't good with foreign languages, so she looked at me with admiring eyes.
Well, I've been connected to overseas since I was little. It's not that impressive.
I was almost sucked into her eyes, trying to distract myself by quickly finishing the drink in front of me. Nancy laughed as she watched me. After that, our relationship progressed to the point where we would greet each other when we saw one another at school. My friends encouraged me, saying I had finally made a connection, but I never had the courage to talk to Nancy, who was always surrounded by many of her friends.
Is this seat taken?
I was having lunch in the cafeteria when I suddenly heard a voice. Looking up, there was Nancy standing in front of me.
Oh yes, please have a seat.
I couldn't hide my fluster. My speech became awkward, and I was so embarrassed that I just looked down. Nancy, unfazed, sat down in the chair in front of me.
It's been a while. Actually, I've been wanting to talk more with you, Kevin.
Nancy said with a shy smile, lowering her gaze slightly.
Don't get the wrong idea.
Alarms were going off in my head. But being told such things by the person I had fallen for, any man would likely misunderstand. Looking back, I realized I had already fallen right into Nancy's hands by then.
Hello, Kevin.
Since that incident in the cafeteria, whenever Nancy saw me, she would break away from whoever was around and come over to talk to me. The stares from the other guys felt like daggers piercing through me.
What's with that guy? He's not even that good looking, and he seems so gloomy.
Such behind-the-back comments were becoming a daily occurrence. Yet, my friends didn't drift away. And more importantly, the fact that I could talk to Nancy at college made me incredibly happy.
Would you go out with me?
On my graduation day, I gathered my courage and confessed to Nancy.
I'm glad you finally said it. I thought you were just going to graduate and say goodbye.
She laughed and gently grasped the hand I offered. And so, we officially became a couple. Nancy continued attending college unchanged, and I entered the workforce, changing the flow of our lives.
I heard from a mutual friend that you went to a mixer yesterday.
Hearing that Nancy had been to a mixer, I wasn't feeling at peace.
It was just a get-together, you know? You're always busy with work and we can't meet on weekdays.
And you were out alone with a guy the other day too, right? Honestly, I'd rather you didn't do that.
Nancy, who has many friends of both genders, often goes out just with her guy friends. Even though I know there's nothing to it, as her boyfriend, I can't help but worry. Even if Nancy isn't interested, you can say the same about the guys.
So, should we break up then? I'm just hanging out with my friends. Why do you have to interfere in my friendships?
That's okay, I get it. Sorry, but could you at least let me know when you're going to be with guys?
Every time we argue, Nancy brings up breaking up because she knows I won't choose to break up. In the end, I apologize, and the argument ends. I may be a fool for love, and though I hate to admit it, I can't bring myself to be firm. Despite it all, I love Nancy deeply and don't want to lose her to anyone else.
Will you marry me?
The year Nancy graduated, I proposed to her. I was afraid of her meeting more people when she started working and finding someone better than me. I held out the engagement ring, my hands trembling.
Just like when you confessed. Your hands are shaking again.
Nancy laughed and held my hand just like she did back then. Tears streaming down my face. I slipped the sparkling ring onto her left hand.
Thank you. Let's make a great future together, okay?
Absolutely. I'll make sure we're happy.
And so, we became husband and wife and started living together. However, married life wasn't quite the happiness I had imagined. Since we both worked, we split the household chores. Whoever got home earlier would do the shopping and cooking, and we'd clean together on days off. Initially, there were no problems.
I'm home. Oh, Nancy.
Today was Nancy's day off. On such days, she usually took care of all the chores. However, the breakfast dishes were still in the sink, and it looked like the laundry hadn't been done. Worse, I couldn't find Nancy anywhere.
Is she out somewhere?
Just as I was about to call her, the bedroom door opened.
Welcome home. I fell asleep.
Nancy said with a big yawn as she took a bottle of water from the fridge and poured it down her throat. I wondered if she might be feeling unwell, but she seemed fine.
Wait, did you sleep all day?
Well, it's my day off. What's wrong with resting?
No, that's fine, but we agreed that you'd at least do the basic chores, right?
I'm not aiming for a spotless house, and you could just turn on the cleaning robot. It involves just washing the dishes and doing the laundry during that time. It only takes the morning to finish those tasks, and she's free to do whatever she likes in the afternoon. It shouldn't be a problem even if you sleep till noon and then start.
Dishes can be wiped before use, and we have a dryer for the laundry. So it's okay even at night, right? The house isn't that dirty either.
Yay, but what about dinner tonight?
I changed the subject to avoid making her grumpy and complicating things further. I know I shouldn't run away from my problems, but I didn't want to argue with Nancy.
Well, I haven't shopped, so can you whip something up with what's left?
What? I'm supposed to cook. Wasn't the deal that the person off work would do it?
The rule is that the person on a day off cooks dinner. Exceptions are made for illnesses, but Nancy seems to be fine.
I'm still groggy from waking up. Just make something simple. And wash the dishes, please.
I'm tired from work. I was hoping to take a shower first. Can you make dinner while I'm in the shower?
No, I was about to take a shower now. You don't have anything else to do, right? Please?
Nancy quickly headed to the bathroom. As I watched her leave, I sighed deeply and reluctantly began to prepare the meal. About 30 minutes later, Nancy came into the living room.
Well, baked potato? I would have preferred pasta today.
If you have complaints, you should make it yourself.
Well, okay then.
Nancy reluctantly started eating the baked potato I had made. I quickly finished my portion and headed to the bath. When I came back, Nancy was watching TV, and of course, the dishes from earlier hadn't been washed.
Nancy, you haven't done anything all day, right? Could you at least wash the dishes?
Stop nagging. I get tired from work too. I'm a newbie and there's a lot to learn. If you have so many complaints, maybe we should get divorced, okay?
Just like when we were dating, she would quickly bring up breaking up whenever something bothered her. At that time, I was just happy that someone as desirable as Nancy had chosen me. Driven by my selfish desire to not lose her, I had proposed to her when we were both still young. She probably still wanted to have fun, but outings with friends had drastically reduced after getting married. This might be contributing to her stress. My resolve to make her happy hasn't changed, so in the end, I always give in. One day, about 2 years after we got married,
I'm going to quit my job.
Nancy suddenly said that.
What happened? Is something wrong?
It's not for any particular reason, but we can live comfortably on just your income, right? So I figured there's no point in me working.
Indeed, I often get jobs related to international affairs because I speak several languages, and my income is higher than my peers and most people my age. There wouldn't be a problem if Nancy became a full-time homemaker.
I don't mind, but in return, you need to take care of the household chores. That's my condition.
If I quit my job, I'll have time, and I can handle that much.
Following her declaration, Nancy quit her job soon after. Since leaving her job, she has been taking care of the household chores well and seems to be in a good mood. If this keeps our home running smoothly, I'm relieved. But that peace was short-lived.
Welcome home. Hey, look at this. Isn't it cute?
Nancy was wearing a dress I had never seen before, twirling around.
It looks great on you. What's going on?
I was bored, so I went shopping. Look, I even bought this bag.
On the sofa, there was a bag from a well-known brand. Even I, who know nothing about brands, could tell it was expensive.
You bought it. Where did the money come from?
Obviously on the credit card. What are you talking about?
Since Nancy became a homemaker, she's been handling all the shopping, so I had left money management to her as well.
I'm not saying you shouldn't buy things, but You should at least tell me about such expensive purchases. Money doesn't grow on trees.
What? You earn enough, so don't be so stingy.
Nancy headed to the kitchen, humming a tune.
Look, I made your favorite hamburgers today. I'm doing the housework, so no complaints, okay?
Indeed, when she was working, housework was neglected, and it often led to arguments. Each time, I would end up giving in. But as long as she kept her promise to do the chores and didn't frequently buy bags and clothes, I turned a blind eye. I do feel I'm too lenient with Nancy. A few years into our marriage, when I turned 30. From this time, my business trips increased, not just within the US, but also internationally. Nancy has been repeating her online shopping sprees on trendy international websites, which aren't cheap. With the increase in my business trips, my salary increased, and I had no choice but to accept this.
I'll be going on a business trip for about 2 weeks starting next week.
Really? Okay, take care.
Nancy doesn't seem to feel particularly lonely. She always responds in the same detached manner. I even felt she seemed slightly relieved each time. Although the married life I had imagined was far from what it turned out to be, the fact that Nancy was always there when I came home from work was comforting. Since she would welcome me home each day, I thought maybe expecting more was asking too much. After all, despite many attractive men aiming for her, she had chosen to marry an unremarkable guy like me. Marriage should be an equal partnership. Yet somehow, I had unknowingly created a hierarchy between us. Now, I understand that all too well. Ever since we got married, I always wanted to have children with Nancy.
I want kids too, but I'd like to enjoy more time just the two of us for a bit longer.
But whenever I brought up the topic, it was always sidestepped like this. As a result, we never had children, and time passed by, and now I'm already 50 years old. I've often felt envious seeing happy families together at shopping malls. However, every couple is different, and I was happy to have married Nancy, the woman I love. Despite some of her whims, it's true that Nancy has supported me throughout our life together. I thought we would continue living together, just the two of us, for the rest of our lives. Well, an overseas assignment. One day, at the age of 50, I was suddenly assigned to work abroad.
Yes, it's a new branch, but it's not performing well. You have good sales results and, more importantly, you're proficient in languages, which makes you the right person for the job. Could you think about it?
Having traveled abroad with my parents since I was young, I had always admired living overseas. So, this offer was something I had hoped for. However, it's different now that I'm not single anymore. I have Nancy. Though we don't have children, the thought of moving to a foreign country with no friends or acquaintances worried me.
Welcome home. Dinner is ready.
Nancy was setting the dinner on the table. I decided it was time to bring up the topic of the transfer. Actually, Dave's talk of an overseas assignment. I'm thinking of accepting it if you're okay with it. I cautiously asked, watching for Nancy's reaction.
Well, why not? You're fluent in languages, and you won't have any trouble.
For a moment, she furrowed her brow, and I thought she might object. But she quickly returned to her usual self and responded with a gentle smile. Are you really okay with it?
Yes, I don't mind. You look so serious. I thought you were laid off or something. Come on, eat before dinner gets cold.
She accepted it more smoothly than I expected. which caught me off guard. Excited about the prospect of living abroad, a dream I had always cherished. The next day, I informed my boss, Michael, that I would be transferring, and although it was sudden, I would be leaving the US next week.
You've accumulated quite a bit of paid leave, haven't you? You should use that for the transfer preparations and to settle in over there.
I loved my job, so I only ever used my paid leave for Nancy's birthday or our anniversaries. So, I have almost all of it left. I plan to take a bit extra after the preparations to explore the local sites with Nancy, excited about the adventure. Still, I needed to work for another 2 days to handle the transition. I know it's short notice, but my transfer starts next week. Can you start packing a bit at a time while you do the housework? I've also taken the day after tomorrow off. We'll have a few days of paid leave once we get there, so we can do some sightseeing. I placed the travel book I had picked up at the bookstore on the table on my way home. Nancy looked genuinely puzzled as she saw it. What's wrong? Is this all too sudden? If it is, you can come over later at your own pace. Considering Nancy has many friends, leaving for the US next week might have been too harsh, I thought.
Wait, what are you talking about? I never said I was coming with you.
What? Nancy's words left me speechless.
That's what I'm saying. It's fine if you want to transfer, but I'm not going with you. Why do you assume I am?
But you agreed when we talked about the transfer, right?
I never said I'd come with you, though.
Thinking back, I realized I had only discussed that there was a transfer opportunity. I hadn't explicitly asked her to come with me, nor had I asked what she wanted to do. It turns out, I had misunderstood. So, you were planning to stay in the US by yourself. Unlike a business trip, there's no guarantee I'll come back.
Maybe it's like a solo assignment, right? Just send me the money. You don't have the guts to divorce me, right?
With those cold words, a divorce paper was nonchalantly tossed onto the travel book I had spread out. A divorce paper. So, you want to divorce me? I picked up the divorce paper and asked Nancy in return.
I'd been thinking about it for a while, but you wouldn't have the courage, right? So just send me the money, and I'll put up with it.
The divorce paper I picked up was already filled out in Nancy's section. All I needed to do was sign and submit it, and the divorce would be official. Understood. That's all I said. Then I hurriedly packed my bags, and by the next week, I had left for overseas. From that conversation until the day I left the US, there was no communication between Nancy and me. Moreover, she stopped doing any housework for me. No meals prepared, no laundry done. During the day, she was out almost every day, coming home late at night, or sometimes not until early morning. It seemed Nancy never really loved me. What she loved was my money. Why didn't I realize this before? As I looked down at the US from the airplane, I thought to myself, tears streaming down my face. The branch I was transferred to is located in Italy. After the plane landed and I passed through the gate, I got into a taxi. As we headed towards the city center, the scenery became increasingly beautiful. The thought that Nancy might have been here by my side made my heart take a bit. Even though I had resolved to come here, it seems memories aren't so easily forgotten. The new apartment I arrived at was, unsurprisingly, empty. I lay back on the bare floor and let out a big sigh. This is where I start my new life. I muttered to myself. Then, realizing that having nothing could make me wallow in sadness, I decided to go out and buy the essentials for now. Shopping alone turned out to be enjoyable. Back in the US, Nancy was always with me, insisting on going here and there. She never let me visit the stores I was interested in. Yet, I thought I was happy just to be with her, which is terrifying in retrospect. Since I have a few days of paid leave here, I'll take my time to gather what I need. In a sense of starting anew, I brought only a few clothes from the US and didn't bring any large furniture or appliances. Selecting things to my taste was a delightful process. By the time 3 days had passed since arriving in Italy, as I was setting up the room, humming to myself, my phone suddenly rang. Moreover, it was an unfamiliar tone, a ringtone from an app. When I checked the screen, I saw Nancy's name. Calling directly between the US and abroad would result in international charges. She likely used the app to avoid these charges. Although I expected her to call soon, I ignored it and resumed setting up the room. I assembled the bookshelves and bed I had bought and pondered where to place things. However, Nancy's calls did not stop. Unable to proceed with my work, I reluctantly answered the phone. Hello? My voice sounded colder than I expected.
Hey, why didn't you answer right away? Things are getting really complicated over here.
Nancy's voice came through the phone, sounding extremely frantic. Her voice was so shrill that it hurt my ears, and I instinctively pulled the phone away. What do you mean by trouble? I don't think it has anything to do with me.
How can you say it's not related? There's something about the apartment lease and the deposit, and the landlord is saying something nonsensical.
Well, I'm not coming back there. And if you continue to live there, it needs to be in your name? Actually, the day after Nancy threw the divorce paper at me, I filed it. So, we're strangers now. If that's the case, I'm under no obligation to continue paying the rent for that apartment. I told the landlord about the divorce and that I wanted to change the lease to her name. When the contract holder moves out due to a divorce, of course, a name change on the lease is necessary. If my ex-wife Nancy wants to continue living there, she needs to sign a new lease agreement.
Why should I? Just because you're not here doesn't mean I have to change the lease.
What are you talking about? Why should I be the leaseholder for a stranger's apartment? Have you forgotten? You threw the divorce paper at me.
The divorce paper. Did you actually file it?
Nancy probably never expected me, who always caved to her demands, to actually go through with the divorce. Indeed, every time we argued and she brought up breaking up, I hated it and ended up giving in. I've woken up, you know, it's late, but I should have done this sooner.
Unbelievable. Why would you do something like that on your own? You promised you would always make me happy. I love you. Why are you making me unhappy?
Living alone on assignment and just receiving money might indeed seem like happiness. I'm out of sight, and she can do as she pleases. If I hadn't known a certain fact, I might have just sent money and lived separately as Nancy wanted. Love me, even after what you did with that guy James.
Gosh, who's that? Don't say things that make no sense to dodge the topic.
Nancy's voice suddenly became shaky, a clear sign of her being upset. James is the name of the man Nancy was having an affair with. I had noticed a while back that Nancy was seeing another man. One day, I saw a mug I'd never seen before lined up in the cupboard. Looking closer, there were several new dishes stored away. When I tried to use one, Nancy suddenly yelled out,
Hey, don't use those without asking. They are my favorites.
She then took them from my hands and stashed them deep in the cupboard. Until then, there had never been any dishes or mugs that were off limits, so I was a bit suspicious. But at the time, I just thought she didn't want anyone touching her favorite things. Oops, a razor? One day, I'd ripped over the trash bin next to the sink and spilled its contents. Among the mess, I found a disposable razor I didn't recognize. I usually use a rechargeable razor, so I wouldn't use a disposable one unless my regular one was out of charge. There were also several other small inconsistencies. Still, I wanted to believe in Nancy. But her insistence on staying behind during my transfer and demanding money only finally opened my eyes. While I was still in the US, I hired a private investigator to look into Nancy's activities. Probably they usually met at my house, but because I was home using my paid leave, they couldn't, so she was going out every day. Nancy and her date, usually confined to indoor activities, seemingly unaware of the need to hide their actions, were boldly walking around outside, and evidence was quickly gathered. The investigator introduced me to a lawyer, and I prepared to strike back before coming here. You thought I hadn't noticed? If you're going to bring someone home, you should at least clean up better. Anyway, you'll be hearing from my lawyer soon about alimony and other matters.
Wait, what are you talking about? We're not done talking.
Ignoring Nancy still trying to say something on the phone, I hung up, thinking it best to handle everything through my lawyer from now on. I blocked her number and gently placed my phone on the desk. I had thought everything would proceed smoothly since I had both evidence and a lawyer involved, but it wasn't that easy.
About the compensation for Nancy's affair, the negotiations are tough because she refuses to admit it.
While I was handling tasks at my new job, I received such a call from my lawyer.
Nancy says, the evidence you guys have must be fake. Even if I did cheat, it's because of Kevin, so it's not my fault. I don't want to pay any alimony. Let me talk to Kevin. She doesn't agree.
I see. If she wants to be difficult, I am prepared to take this to court. I'll leave it in your hands.
Understood. I will contact you again.
No matter how much she resists, it won't turn out well for her. But she won't admit it because she doesn't want to pay. Even talking about dividing our assets after divorce, there isn't much since Nancy has been spending freely. She has no job and no income, so she wants to keep as much money as she can. And perhaps she's even hoping to take money from me. A few days later, while taking a break from an outside appointment, I received a call from Michael.
Sorry to bother you during such a busy time right after your transfer. Actually, a woman claiming to be your wife has been coming to the company almost every day recently.
Oh my God. What do you mean? When I heard the description of the woman from Michael, there was no doubt it was Nancy.
I can't reach Kevin, so please call his office.
Nancy seems to be raising her voice at the company. She gets escorted out by security every time, but undeterred, she keeps coming back. They thought about calling the police, but since she is technically my ex-wife, they decided to contact me first. I'm sorry to trouble you. I'll arrange to have a proper discussion with her. I told my lawyer everything and arranged to return to the US to have a meeting. People often say divorcing is harder than marrying, But who could have imagined I'd end up in such a situation? On the day of the meeting, I visited the law office. I'm sorry this has become so complicated.
No worries. It's rare for things to go smoothly in these cases. Anyway, she's late.
The lawyer gave a wry smile. The appointed time had already passed by 15 minutes. She's the one who wanted this meeting, yet she's late. What is she thinking? Then, suddenly, there was a commotion at the entrance.
You said we'd do this together, didn't you?
Why should I? I didn't do anything wrong. You handle it.
Entering the office loudly arguing were Nancy, whom I hadn't seen for a few days, and a man, James, her affair partner. He was also refusing to pay, so I had called him to this meeting.
Please calm down. Come this way.
Prompted by the lawyer, the two took their seats. Once everyone was present, we quickly moved to the main issue.
As I have mentioned multiple times, both of you have an obligation to pay damages to Kevin.
But why? Where's the proof that those photos aren't fake? We're just friends.
Yo, why are we being accused of having an affair just because we're a man and a woman who are friends?
Photos of them arm in arm and entering a motel together suggest otherwise. Despite this, they continue to deny the affair.
Nowadays, photos can be easily faked. You made those up for the money, didn't you?
What benefit would that bring me? I'm not like you. I don't need the money.
Then we don't need to pay any damages, right? We're struggling just to make ends meet.
Nancy had been a housewife with no income. According to the detective agency, James only worked day jobs when he felt like it, without stable income. Because of this, they were desperately trying to avoid acknowledging the affair and any payments. You think you are going to get off without any consequences? I'm not that naive. Work double time if you have to.
There's also the option of paying in installments if a lump sum is impossible. If Kevin is okay with that.
The lawyer glanced my way. Yes, I'm fine with installments.
So, what will you do? If this continues, we may have to go to court.
I was willing to endure the cost and time of a lawsuit if it meant holding them accountable. I never imagined I would be in such a dispute with Nancy, whom I loved so much. In hindsight, there were many times I should have reconsidered. Love truly is blind and full of regrets. But it's not a lie that there were happy times as well. I didn't want to resort to a trial if I could help it.
What? A trial?
Liar, you promised to make me happy. A trial over just an affair. Divorce is going to make my life difficult enough. I don't work, you know. Don't make things harder for me.
Nancy had been a homemaker for many years and seemed to have no intention of working again. You could get a job, right? There are part-time jobs, after all.
Damn it, I married you thinking I could manipulate you because you were weak. You landed a good job and had money. But if I knew it would come to this, I would have married someone else.
Finally revealing her true nature, Nancy's face bore no trace of the woman I once loved. She just glared at me with resentment. Choosing someone like me, I let my negative feelings spoil you. It seems this marriage was a mistake for both of us.
If you're aware you indulge her, then all this is your responsibility, right? We're the victims here.
James absurdly remarked and laughed heartily, and Nancy smirked in agreement. Don't joke with me. I've always cherished you, and this is how you repay me. You've oppressed me all along. Why not show some sincerity for once at the end? I will not compromise no matter what you say. If you dislike it, the next time we meet will be in court. I slammed my hand on the desk in front of me and glared at them. Nancy, who had never been opposed by me before, flinched at my sudden assertiveness.
Hanan, are you serious about a trial?
Hey, what are we going to do? If it goes to trial, it'll cost a fortune. It's your fault, so you better handle it. You said you could handle this guy, didn't you?
You really underestimated me. Sorry, but I have no more feelings for Nancy. Thinking she could manipulate me because I was infatuated with her, she probably assumed I would ultimately relent. But seeing me not behave as expected, Nancy's face turned pale, sweat forming on her forehead.
Is that all for today's discussion? Nancy and James, please consider your decision carefully.
James seems unconvinced, still making a fuss alone, while Nancy is visibly distracted, her mind clearly elsewhere.
James, if you continue making a scene, I will have to call the police, okay?
Jesus Christ, it's fine. Let's go, Nancy.
Nancy's eyes, brimming with large tears, meet mine, but I quickly avert my gaze. Feeling utterly abandoned, Nancy left the office crying, dragged away by James. After apologizing to my lawyer for any inconvenience, I returned to Italy. A few days later, I received a call from the lawyer informing me that Nancy and James had agreed to pay the compensation.
If there are any delays in payment, please contact us anytime.
Thank you very much. I'll contact you if anything comes up. I replied and hung up, feeling relieved that things were finally settling down. According to a mutual friend, Nancy had already moved out of the apartment we used. It seemed she couldn't afford the maintenance costs. Now, she and James are living in a shabby apartment where drafts blow through. Their lives are far from happy, and they argue with each other almost every day. Meanwhile, I'm enjoying fulfilling days here in Italy. Divorced at 50 and single, but life on my own isn't too bad. The people at work are great, making it a pleasant place to work, and I cherish the freedom it brings. I used to think being with someone I loved was my happiness, but it turns out that happiness was just my own illusion. From now on, I plan to focus on my work and myself, and fully enjoy the second chapter of my life.